I would like to go back and talk more about the Muslim American population.
Mhm.
If you can tell us about their contributions towards improving the society in which they live in.
Yeah, very good. You know, the Muslims in this country have a very long historical relationship with this land. And that relationship has been expressed in a number of different ways. It has been expressed through the institution of slavery, the transatlantic slave trade, when 1 out of every 3 Africans brought into this country were Muslim. And we find that during this particular period, uh, the most cherished institutions or monuments in this country, particularly in Washington, D.C., like the United States Capitol, like the Washington Monument, like the White House in which the president resides, were actually built by slave labor. And when you look at the slave labor historically at this time, in places like Washington, D.C., you find that there was a large Muslim slave population. One of them, and I don't want to digress too far, but one of them being a Muslim brother who lived to be over 100 years old by the name of Yarrow Muhammad or Yarrow Mahmud. This was an individual who was captured in painting by a colonial painter by the name of Charles Peale. And his so-called master, as Peale was going around making these colonial paintings, he went to this particular plantation and he was asked, show me something different. I've traveled around. I want to see something different amongst the slaves. So the so-called master of Yarrow said, well, I have someone different. I have this old man on my plantation. He's a really old guy. I don't know what he's doing. I go to his little place. I see him bumping his head on the floor. He doesn't drink when I give the other slaves alcohol. Certain times of the year he tries to starve himself to death. I don't really understand what's wrong with this man, but he was a Muslim. And Yarrow Mahmud maintained his Islam throughout his sojourn as a slave in this country, and he lived to be over 100 years old. He ended up buying his own freedom and being a part owner in a bank in Washington, D.C. So we find that whether or not the condition of the Muslims were in slavery, and there are many other examples that we can take from that era, whether we're talking about the condition and of the various waves of Muslims coming into this country, whether or not we're talking about the immigrants who had come into this land as merchants, and through their business practices elevated the standards of just business, just in the way that they treated their customers, the goods that they brought into this country, whether we're talking about the Sears Tower and the architect, the Muslim architect that designed this tremendous building in Chicago, whether we're talking about the physicians who are performing near miraculous feats of medicine on a day-to-day basis throughout the United States in hospitals and operating rooms in this country, we have to understand that the Muslim population in this country is a very unique population, not just because it's the most diverse ethnic and racial population of Muslims in the world, but it's also the most educated, formally educated. It is also the population that has the highest family household incomes. And as a result of that, we find that these Muslims in this nation come to this land and are contributors in every aspect of the society. Like today, we have, for the first time, there was a Muslim recently elected to the United States House of Representatives, Keith Ellison. Now there's a second representative in the United States House of Representatives. And we pray, and we should pray for them, that they will bring their Islamic values to this auspicious place called the United States House of Representatives. So you find Muslims in every walk of life. You find Muslims making major contributions, have made contributions historically, and continue to make them today.